Oh my gosh, it's good to see all of you. Holy cow. Wow. Several of you commented about my gray hair. Thanks. Actually, many of you are responsible for that. 22 years living with you, some more than others, but at any rate, it's good to be back. Steve and Catherine, thank you so much for inviting us. This is awfully gracious of you. You certainly didn't need to do it, even though I pleaded with you that you would let me. So thanks. I'm really grateful you're here, and Ben now, and I knew Ben, I guess, over the years a little bit, but Wanda, nice to see you. Yeah, nice to see you. I had lost my cup here earlier on. I'd placed it down here, and then it was missing, and if I'd known Drew was in the habit of stealing things, I would have looked to him to find that. Yeah, I'm flooded with memories this morning. I want to be a sermon and not just a remembrance, but Bob, those days of the building committee, we looked out here, and I remember the old ag teacher, Jim Nolan. Some of you remember. Anybody remember Jim Nolan? Oh, yeah. What a great guy. And he took me out here in his old brown truck one day, and all the grass was about this high. Somehow he got through the grass, and there's some cattle, hay feeders, and this was your dream. I think, Lorraine, you had something to do with buying this land. And Esther Yoder. And Esther, did you make it this morning? I know she's in rehab, but she told me yesterday she was going to come. So, any rate, Esther and E.T.'s leading the first capital campaign, and you're right, Lynn and Toby, that building committee, we see Bob and Bob Jones and David Tice and Barb Finlayson and Lynn Monaco, and I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but we met and we prayed, and then Lynn Dominich and Peggy Kirkpatrick went up somewhere in Georgia and saw some sort of festival. And so they came back with this great idea called Possum Creek Fall Festival, that what we ended up doing was, it was a strategy to get this land cleared. So whenever we'd have a festival, we'd clear that section of land, or we'd clear that section of land, we'd clear that section of land. I made funnel cake back here one time. All it is grease. I don't know why any rate, so that was then. Well, I want to begin with a funny story, a joke. My favorite funny story and a joke. So I let you know it's a funny story so that, because there's, some folks are slower than others, and you want to catch it at the end. So, Sharon Papa, would you be sure and nudge Ed when it's near the end of the story? So you've heard it before, but it's still funny, and it leads into the sermon. Oh, I forgot to read the scripture, so let me do that first. Things don't change, do they? I'm the good shepherd, Jesus said. I know my own sheep, and they know me. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, I give up my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that don't belong to this sheep pen. I must lead them too. They will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. May God add his blessing to the reading of this word. So the joke goes like this. There's a shepherd in the northern Scotland, and he's minding his own business, and he's taking care of his sheep, and this cloud of dust comes from far away. It gets closer and closer. And out of this cloud of dust is a large SUV, and out of that SUV jumps a man in his Gucci shoes, Armani suit, Ray-Ban sunglasses, and he comes running up to the shepherd and says, "Hey, if I tell you how many sheep you got, can I have one?" The shepherd looks at him like, "You're out of your mind." But okay. So he pulls out his cell phone, and he calculates. He looks around, and he does a little calculation, and he said, "You got 1,223 sheep." I said, "Holy cow, that's right. Go ahead." So he grabs one, throws him in the back of his SUV, and starts to get into the car to take off. And the shepherd says, wait a minute. If I tell you what you do for a living, can I have my sheep back? And he says, sure. What do I do for a living? He said, you're a consultant. He said, yeah, that's right. How'd you know? He said 3 things. First, you show up without being asked to show up. Second, you want me to pay you for telling me what I already know. You're good. You got better over the years. And third, you really don't know beans about my business because you just took my dog. Did you punch him, Sharon? Yeah. Ed got a hole in one the other day at UF, and thank God I wasn't there to see it. Jan and I have been gone for 2.5, 3 years, and during that time we served 2 interim positions. And I would begin each interim position telling that joke because I wanted them to know that we weren't there just to hold the space, not just to take up time, just to not do anything. We didn't want to be a consultant, we wanted to be a shepherd. We wanted to get involved in their lives. And we had some success. I mean, it went well at Heritage in Clearwater. The parking lot had gotten so it wasn't usable for their once-a-month skating, community skate night. So we got $50,000 to repave that parking lot, and the skate night was awesome. And they owed a bunch of money, $3 million. And I'd learned a few things from you about raising money. And Troy Holloway. And so we ended up raising $1.2 million to go to their debt. And then the bishop asked us to go to Pasadena Community Church in St. Petersburg, where we met up with David and Grace Lindsay. It's great to carry on these great things of habitat and taking care of children. It was great to see you guys again. And there we had a famous old building that J. Wallace Hamilton preached in, but all the roofs leaked. You know something about that, don't you? I don't know how that one got away from us, Bob, but actually, I think it was when you and I were out of town and David Dodge was in charge when that decision was made. At any rate, so we raised a lot of money, and it was good. It was a great experience there. But in preparation for this sermon, I've been thinking about that. Am I really more like the consultant or like the shepherd? And I want you to wrestle with that today, too, because, 25 years ago, Jan and I showed up here, and you didn't ask for us. The bishop told us to come. And I ended up telling you what you already knew, that you were going to move and you're going to have to give a lot of money. And I really didn't know beans about your life, although we tried, and we got to be there over time. So we started off, and it was a great early beginning, and I was a consultant those early days. You remember that? They say there are 3 stages every preacher goes through, and everybody, that is, early on in your career, you see somebody out there drowning, and you shout out advice. 3 easy steps to not drowning. And then later, you throw them a lifeline. But somewhere along the line, you realize it's about getting into the water with them. And that happened somewhere along the way. You coached us along, you nurtured us along. I remember early on Sharm Burns saying, in a different context, but she said, I don't think she was trying to get at me. She was saying, ideas are the easy part. Well, darn, I was an idea man. I was a visionary. That's what I was known for. And she, who worked with troubled girls, said, oh, that's the easy part. And she was right. And then early on, Gene Evans came to me and said, Dan, you're killing us. Well, she didn't say it that way. Gene is so nice about it. She's so nice about it. But the message was, I said, Gene, tell me the truth. And in her Jack Nicholson, A Few Good Men way, you can't handle the truth, she said. I'm making a little bit of that up, but she said, wait a minute. You have no idea what it takes to do some of the things you're talking about doing. You don't know what the details are. And that was a great lesson for me, Gene, and we've had a great journey since then. We sort of began to see things a little differently. And then the third thing that happened, as you know, is our daughter Siobhan's accident. It's been 18 years. Her anniversary was this past Tuesday, and we were up in Virginia. And she wanted to celebrate her life. We wanted to celebrate her life. And we went to the ice cream place, Sweet Magnolia. I think we have a picture of her, and there she is. And Ethan and Sarah. So they're growing up and doing well. And our Gainesville grandkids, who are absolutely amazing, and I won't point them out over here, but they're here. Well, as you know, that changed everything, and I think that's when I became a pastor. And but as I've thought about that for this sermon, I thought, okay, what's my relationship with God? Am I a consultant or shepherd? I show up with God in my prayer time with my own agenda. I tell God everything that He already knows. and I really often don't take time to get to know the heart of God. You know what I mean? How about you with your closest loved ones? Are you the consultant or the shepherd? Giving advice? And what kind of God do you have? Do you have a consultant like that guy, or the shepherd? God gives you advice but isn't involved in your life, doesn't know you inside and out. I've sensed over the past 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years that our culture is more attuned to the consultant than the shepherd. That is, Twitter and Facebook and all of those things fit with a consultant. It shows up in your inbox. You didn't ask for it, and you already know what the other person's thinking, and it becomes a little bit divisive. Have any of you ever been unfriended? Have any of you unfriended anybody? Anybody within the same body of Christ? You see, we're a consultant culture more than a shepherd culture, and so we don't see beyond those differences of opinions, those things that and I'm as bad as anybody. I mean, I wish all of you looked at the world like I did, but you don't, so that's all right. Here's what a friend of mine in Texas said. We live in a day when the smallest action or inconsequential statement can set Twitter on fire. When we dissect and analyze every word and syllable, when all it takes to divide us is one misguided word or opinion, we inhabit a world in which political or ideological differences can evidently never be forgotten or forgiven. Wow. Oh, how I long for a revival of great ideas and ideals, for a vision that makes us seem small, for a task that unites rather than divides us. Didn't you love David Dodge's prayer? A vision of who this church is and what it means to this community and all of that. And then, in contrast to that, you know, Toni Morrison, the Nobel laureate, died a week or so ago, and many of you love her writings, and I came across this thing from her. What a contrast to some of the Twitter stuff. Language can never pin down slavery, genocide, war, nor should it yearn for the arrogance to be able to do so. Its force, its felicity is in its reach toward the ineffable. Now, I have no idea what ineffable means. But I knew I was coming back to this university town. And some of you like those big words. No. ineffable, that beyond description, the beauty and the vision. That's what language is intended to convey, something beyond itself, something like a shepherd taking care of its sheep. But let me change the imagery or the metaphor just a little bit. I've got 3 metaphors. To azaleas and George Pridgeon. I think we have a picture of George and Priscilla Pridgeon. Oh my, oh my. I don't know, those of you who have been here the last 10 years or so, you may not know that George was this retired early from Southern Bell and became this parish visitor. And he made 22,000 visits. And he took incredible notes on each one. And he just stay for 10 minutes. I visited with him a few times, and after 10 minutes, I was ready to go, and George was just getting started. I mean, he was there for 45 minutes because he was a shepherd. And his implanting of his DNA is in this church. And when you were with George, you just loved life. What a great guy, and Priscilla. George's offspring are here, Ken, and I think Andrew and Amy. And, speaking of Andrew and Amy, those early days, Jack Detweiler was the missions guy, volunteer position. Then we had enough money somehow to hire Andrew part-time, and then Andrew full-time, and then Ted came, and then Kelly now, and then Ward Simonton and Megan over at Faith Mission. And just missions took off. It was great. Andrew, you're here somewhere, aren't you? Where are you, Andrew? You're not going to tell me, are you? At any rate, funny story about Andrew. Madison Youth Ranch was starting up in the north, up in Madison. And we took a busload of people there, and I drive in the bus. And we get there to the gate, and Scott, Annette Pendergrass's husband, Scott, is that his name, Pendergrass? Okay. He comes up to the window, it was raining, and he said, "Hey, Dan, thanks that Trinity just pledged $200,000 to build the first unit." I said, "What?" We were in the midst of paying down $3.5 million on this so we'd be debt-free. We're in the midst of that. Andrew announced that we're doing $200,000. That's why he's not here today. He knew I was going to get after him. I said, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?" So I sat down with Priscilla. I mean, I'm not making this up. The rest of the stuff I am, but not this. But at any rate, I said, "Priscilla, here's Priscilla. Georgia, I don't know if Georgia died yet." She said, "We'll get it." And you did it. That's what you were. That's who you are. That's what you were. So at any rate, I called Priscilla and I said, "Hey, is George there?" She said, "He's out under the azaleas." I thought, oh my gosh, did he die? Later, he did die a tragic death down by Ace Hardware. But at any rate, and so I said, okay, let me talk to him when he gets back. And so the house where we are, and we're moving back into that house, and we're excited about being back as a part of Trinity, as a member part of the Trinity. And we have azaleas. And so George is under his azalea bushes pulling out those blankety-blank vines. You know what I'm saying? Those thorny, prickly vines, those Virginia creeper vines. What is it? What are they called? Smilax. Nothing to smile about, but anyway, they're smilax. Okay. So I thought, gee whiz, if that Georgia boy can do it, so can this Ohio farm boy. So I got after this stuff, and anyway, I gave up over the years. I think when George died, something died in all of us. And so since we've retired and are back since the end of June, I've been working on our azaleas in this hot summer sun. And I found more vines than I can believe. And I am getting angry about it right now. In fact, I got to the place where I tore out a bunch of stuff. In fact, I think this next slide shows these where the azaleas used to be. I don't know if you can tell. I mean, that used to all be filled in with beautiful azaleas. Now, I got a little carried away in clearing out stuff. But I got to the point where now I don't even like azaleas. I mean, they only show up a week and a half a year every spring. When I even drive on this property, I don't see azaleas, I see vines. Here's the good news. I don't know, a while back, since Maddie Berger, who grew up here, went to Eckerd College, and we were in St. Petersburg, and she wanted to get married down there, so I did their wedding. And so Maddie said, hey, Dan, what can I do to pay it? No, I don't want to, no, yeah, no, yes, no. She said, hey, wait a minute. What if my dad, Bryce, there you are. What if my dad, who does landscape, what if he takes care of all your landscaping needs for the rest of your life free of charge? I said, but man, that is so cool, Bryce. I take back everything I've ever said about you. Any rate, so here's the point. Do you ever do that with people you know and love? Where all you can see are the vines and not the beauty of the bush, the azalea bushes? We do that, don't we? When we first came out here, all we had was prayer and vision and hopes and dreams. And Bob's right. We would run into vines, prickly, thorny vines, and we'd stop and pray. We'd stop and pray, and we'd look to Barbie Finlayson and say, Barbie, what do you think? Or Bob Jones. We were shepherds to each other. We knew each other's names. Is Carmen Nelson here today? Carmen's everywhere. You know, Carmen, where are you? Oh, there you are. You know, before Google and Facebook knew everything about you, Carmen knows more than Google and Facebook. And then the last metaphor, and I'll be done here pretty soon. You know, after Siobhan's accident, 2 years later, I think, a couple here in the church knew somebody who ran a dude ranch out in Colorado, and they arranged for us to have a week free out at this dude ranch. It was near Steamboat Springs, and it was just a glorious week where we rode horses and ate and just kind of recovered and renewed. And then afterwards, we rented a car and drove around some of the mountains there. It was really glorious. And then it rained one day. It rains here every now and then, doesn't it? It rained one day, and I turned the windshield wipers on. Some of you remember this story. And then it stopped raining, and I turned the windshield wipers off, and they wouldn't stop. And this is the honest truth, really. It would not stop. And, you know, pretty soon it got a little irritating. And I stopped the car. I went around and looked under the hood. I'm so good at that sort of thing. And I tried everything, every possible conceivable thing, and these windshield wipers would not stop anytime you turned it on. And I got a little angry, and pretty soon I thought, well, wait a minute. We're here looking at the Rocky Mountains, and I'm missing this amazing view because all I could see is this. You laugh because you're just like that, aren't you? What are some of those little annoyances, those irritants? Because you see, there's always a bigger story. There's a bigger thing that God is doing. So the question is, are you becoming more like the consultant? Or more like a shepherd? What would the people closest to you say? The 23rd Psalm. Jean and her team did that so well. When you're around others, how do they feel? Do they feel like they're in green pastures and still waters? The other day, I needed some work done on my Acura. One of the seats had torn, and L&S were doing some stuff with it, and it was ready, and Jan was driving me down the road in her car, right out here, 53rd Avenue. We came to I don't know if it was this light or the one up by Home Depot, and And just as we were getting close, it was one of those moments, where the light was changing, and so you have to decide, do you go through or you not go through? You know what I mean? And Jan was going to slow down, and I was just slamming on. I was in the passenger seat, and it got a little tense in the car. And after we got through the light, somehow we pulled over to the side of the road, and Jan looked at me with that look that none of you ever see. And she said, you know what? When you're not around, I'm perfectly fine driving my car in this. I see the tishers pointing at each other, yeah. I'm perfectly fine driving this car, but when you're in the car, your body language speaks so loud. It wasn't green pastures and still waters. Do people have their souls restored? Are they renewed? Is there forgiveness? Is there peace? Will you do that? Take the 23rd Psalm and read yourself into it. And then I think the only way one can become this way is for you to let more and more the shepherd be that to you, where God takes you by the green pastures. Does somebody need that today? Where God says, here's some still waters, the beauty of forgiveness, of a new start, of here's the path. You don't know quite where to go, but here it is. And a perspective that surely goodness and mercy, despite all of the stuff going around, all around us. Those 22 years, I made a lot of mistakes. But we had these dreams, and we saw past the squeaky windshield wipers and past the prickly vines. We became shepherds to each other. I tell you what, David said it so well. Gainesville needs Trinity in such a powerful way. Because you, from your beginning days, you have in your DNA this sense of generous orthodoxy. That is, you hold strongly to Jesus. And yet your arms are wide open like the Jesus on the window out there to all, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, people of no faith. I have a friend here. He always come in to the church service after the Apostles' Creed because he said, I don't believe much of that. I said, that's okay. So I moved the Apostles' Creed later. No, that's not true. So the next 60 years, you're going to be consultants or shepherds to each other. Pray with me, would you? God, it's so good to be back. It's so good to see what this congregation is about and how they're doing, and so grateful for Stephen and Catherine and Ben and Alice and, well, all the team. And thank you. Help us to be shepherds. Help us to be shepherds. Amen.